Okay? All right? Not just, this is what I like. I like tteokbokki. Good. Okay? I like to eat soju, drink soju all night. Yes, I can drink 3 bottles. Yeah, let's do it, right? That's college years. That's master years. That's MBA years, right? That's great. That's your memory pocket, okay? What you need to find out is who you really are, okay? Inside your heart, you need to find out, what can I do to this company when I find out? We know as an interviewer, you're sitting up here, okay? And next. When they do those panel type of interviews, they know how much confidence you have, okay? What you know about yourself, and what have you done. Okay, GPAs are important, right? Master schools, GPA, it's tough, okay? But they want to find out, what have you learned from it? Not just, here you go, I'm an honor student. Great. What did you do besides that? Okay, so a lot of the involvement, a lot of participation. And one thing, if I can actually ask of you to really think about, okay, about yourself, is don't ever put a negativity thought in your head. That's one thing I really want. If you can promise me today, if you're taking away something, you forgot everything else what Andy said, but one thing you want to take away is, don't ever think about any negativity of yourself. Like this lady, right? Never, ever, ever. Because every one of you have a potential. Once you put a little barrier in between who you are, what's going to happen is that you're going to step back and you don't know how to move forward. This is the time when everybody has to move 5 paces up front than anybody else with that research. Okay? Alrighty. What other questions do you have about interviewing skills? Yes?
About the last one you were just talking about, so we are trying out to be
Right.
of ourselves, but
Right.
sometimes we are asked the kind of question that, like a weakness or something, but no one likes to talk about our weakness. We kind of feeling like a weakness or something.
Exactly.
But I learned that I should like kind of develop the commands in a way that I should give a positive, like influence on interviewers or something. But so I would like to know how to, what is the best way about our weakness?
About how true about your weakness? The only truth about your weakness is you know yourself. You're presenting to the interviewer who you are. Okay, they want to know, like, if it's a weakness, it's not like, oh, I don't, let's say a blunt example that I had during the interview process. It's like, oh, what is your weakness? Oh, you know what, I wake up late in the morning and I always, don't come to school. Okay, I understand that's your weakness, but, you're going to have to say something that it's much more that is conducive to the role. Okay, this is my weakness. Maybe a little bit much more on a behavior side. Okay, let's say my weakness is not being a bit assertive. I'm very passive. I have a hard time saying no. When somebody approaches me and asks me to do something, even though I have 20 things on my list for that day, it's hard for me to say no. So what I learned is I have to know how to prioritize, but then again, reprioritize on the project on which one is much more, first in hand, and then do the second in hand. So you share that with them. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. When they say something about weakness, it's something that you're not really satisfied with, but I know I can do it. Okay? And I know I can achieve it, and I've done it through some practices, and I'm working on it. So that's what I wanted to share with you. That's what you wanted to say to them.
Do you have or do you remember any specific example about that kind of interviewing skills? Like, I know that for example, it's kind of hard to say, but sometimes I feel like the interviewer, he or she may know that I kind of practice like about to improve my interview skills, talk about my strengths in a better way. But sometimes I feel like I should really communicate with the interviewer.
You should. It's a combination of both. I think you shouldn't deviate yourself. You should still be yourself, but smart in a way to actually present it. If you are going to be applying for a director's position, okay, in the manner of which you speak does take for itself, okay, rather than you are actually hiring as a accountant technician. It's different. Those positions hold very differently. So you're gonna have to polish your skills. You do, absolutely. Okay, it doesn't mean that you have to tell a lie. Absolutely not. Because they can tell. I can tell if someone tells a lie. You can tell. You have a child, right? If they tell a lie, you can tell. Right. If the professor stands here and they're actually lecturing you, they can tell who's paying attention, who's not, who's sleeping, who's like, oh, I don't care about this. Okay? They know. They know. So it's a genuine sense that you want to present to them. But if you need to, you have to polish a bit with your vocabulary at times. Yes. It depends on the position that you are applying. Yes, Charles?
Yeah, I have a question about some difficult situation in interview. I have experience, interviewer is not paying attention to the interview process. I mean, last year I have a chance to visit UI in Ernst & Young.
Okay, Ernst & Young.
Yes, second interview. I think I prepare well. And during the interview, my second interview, first interview was very well. But second interview, the given time is 40 minutes. But she already spent my 20 minutes with another previous candidate.
Oh, so they kind of delayed your interviewing.
And
okay.
I waited it, and but when she came out with the candidate, she loves him. I can see that in my face, and she's smiling like, "See you again," something like that. And when I entered the room, she looked at the work,
the watch,
continuously, and she didn't know what I'm saying. And do question, and
okay.
She tried to wrap up the interview as soon as possible.
So you just felt like it wasn't a fair treatment.
Yeah, but
because I had 40 minutes.
At the point, I also saw things unfair, but other than that, how can maybe even this thing, and there is always bad environment, bad things can happen. That's one of the things, but my question is, how can that employer make focus on my, interview? I mean,
right.
I lost my control.
Right.
So how can I take back my control into the interview?
That's a very good question. That's a very great question. Who would take up for that challenge? Let me ask anyone. Let me say.
Maybe you could ask the interviewer a direct question, try and bring him or her back to what you're talking about, like something about the company or what he or she does, something like that.
Okay.
Basically, get the attention back by asking good questions. How I research or how I did homework before coming to me.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's already in the course of the interview, though.
Yes.
That's already in the course of the interview. So if you ask that question, they're going to be like, oh, okay. What can you do in the beginning? You already know your 20 minutes. You know that it's supposed to be 40 minutes. What can you do? This is where your people skills come out. What would you normally do if it wasn't an interviewer? You're late, and you know that you have that commitment of time. What would you do? What would you do? You consult with the interviewer.
Well, theoretically, I think I'd say, we have to bring up some interesting questions. The questions that might be interesting to the interviewer.
Mm-hmm.
And if he or she is an employer from industry,
Mm-hmm.
we might bring up the kind of question that is something related to industry.
Mm-hmm. You can do that, right? You can do that. Absolutely. But in the initial stage, you know that you only have certain time period left. Okay? That initial beginning report is very, very important. When you first come in, this is typically what they do. It's like, okay, next Charles. Then you come in. Nice to meet you. Please have a seat. Absolutely. right? What's wrong with that? You're waiting for somebody to start the question. Okay, sometimes you're gonna have to put that little spunk in it. So you're gonna sit here and say, well, hello, Miss Andy. Wow, how long have you been here? Oh my goodness, it's been 7 hours you've been interviewing. You must be really exhausted. Is there anything I can get you? And they're like, no, we have to get, going. It's like, oh, so how much time do we have for the interview? Build that rapport. Open up. Speak with them. They're human just like you. Okay? Because when that happens, for me, if somebody, says it, I was like, oh no, please, I understand that we have to go, but let's go ahead and get started. So tell me about yourself. Why are you interested in Ernst & Young? There you go. That's when her suggestion comes in and bring in that interest. Well, I've done Ernst & Young research for X amount of time, and this is what I know, and through this class project, I have actually done X, Y, and Z's, and these are some of the productions that you've made, isn't it? Building that interest. And you're like, yes. Carrying that conversation, meaning that you know about that company. Absolutely. You can do that. You don't have to sit still, wait for somebody to say something, because that's a typical interview at times. And when they're exhausted, they're like, okay. And you just happen to be the last candidate on that parole. And you're like, darn, if I was the first, I could have gotten that job. Sometimes, yes, but you're gonna have to be diligent enough to know what your strategic plan is when it comes to the interviewing, okay? If you are getting into the interview, you've done